Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, we talk about how I believe Walter Hamada brought in James Gunn to replace him as DC Films president, and ultimately James became the co-chair, the co-CEO of DC Studios, but it was always in the planning. And after that, I discuss how Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom cannot be saved, because to save Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, you would have to rewrite, and you would also have to reshoot the entire movie. Now, people who saw that recent test screening said it's obvious they've already made major changes to this movie. So basically, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a mess. We'll be discussing it a little bit later on. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter because we're getting into a new timeline, but it does matter to Warner Brothers Discovery. Bottom line, it looks like the sequel won't be thrilling as many people as the first movie did. But first, let's talk about my theory that Walter Hamada brought in James Gunn back in 2020 to replace him. Why do I think this, and why in actual fact do I actually know this, even though James Gunn blatantly denies this? It's obvious. By 2020, Walter Hamada had been exposed hugely by Ray Fisher. Walter Hamada's position as DC Films president was untenable, not only because Fisher exposed him, but he was in charge of bombs like Birds of Prey. The Suicide Squad was also a bomb, but not because it was a bad movie, to be fair, and Wonder Woman 84 was also a disaster. Basically, the only film in his main tenure that was successful was the Joker movie, and that was a movie he didn't want to make. He told Warner Brothers not to go forward with Todd Phillips' Black Label plan, which clearly would have been a huge mistake. So clearly, Hamada was a disaster as DC president. And if you want to compare the job that Zack Snyder did, someone who knows the comics, who's a director, who understands this audience a lot more, yes, Snyder did a better job than Walter Hamada. Because Zack Snyder never made one DC flop. Man of Steel didn't flop, just didn't make what the studio wanted. BVS didn't flop, didn't make what the studio wanted. And the Snyder Cut was very well received by verified Rotten Tomato critics. Zack Snyder's Snyderverse was more successful than the Hamadaverse. That's a fact. And the movies are clearly better, they have bigger budgets, and they have Zack Snyder behind them. And Man of Steel had Christopher Nolan behind them as well, an iconic auteur who actually brought Zack onto DC. They're the facts. So Walter Hamada's position was untenable after what Ray Fisher had revealed, and the fact that his tenure as DC Film president was an absolute disaster. Now, we can even ask the question, whose idea was the Flash movie to rewrite the timeline in the DCEU? Was it Walter Hamada's idea, or was it James Gunn's idea? And here's another question for you, another controversial question, if you like. Was Henry Cavill removed as Superman because James Gunn and Peter Safran don't want a white Superman? I'm not being racist, I'm asking a question. Now, it's my belief that Kal-El, Clark Kent, should be played by a white actor. But if you want to do President Superman, as I've always said on this channel, yes, an actor of colour. If you want to do Val Zod, yes, an actor of colour. That's fair, and I would hype those projects up. But you don't make Clark Kent a Latino, or Asian, or black, because Clark Kent, Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, is white. It's as simple as that. But don't be surprised if you see a Latino or Asian actor or an African American actor playing Clark Kent, the last son of Krypton, in this world. As I've tried to hint at before, this may not even be about the OG Superman, this may be about John Kent. I'm talking about Superman Legacy. But who knows at this moment? So what's made me discuss this theory I have of Hamada bringing in James Gunn to replace him? Or I'll go deeper than that. Toby Emmerich brought in James Gunn to replace Walter Hamada. Because it was all about, timing is everything. James Gunn had been fired by Disney and Marvel Studios. Well, Marvel Studios didn't fire him. Kevin Feige didn't fire him. Bob Iger fired him. It's as simple as that, and it's simple why they did that. They are a studio. They are a company that make content for families and children. You can't have someone making jokes about children, touching children, right? It's as simple as that. So I agree with Disney's decision, but Gunn is clever, he has connections, and his people, his cast, fought against doing a movie, a Guardians Volume 3, without him. So he got that gig back, but then they said to him, you'll be out after that gig, and he was happy to do so. And luckily for Gunn, he was approached by Warner Brothers and AT&T at the time to come in, and he was basically given the option to make anything he wanted. Now, these are his words. He was offered Superman. He said no. I don't believe he rejected a Superman movie. I believe he said, let me do my Suicide Squad stuff first, then I'll make Superman. Basically, he was always going to make Superman Legacy. And his reveal, the grenade he pulled the other day when he said that he's been working on Superman Legacy and Creature Commandos for over 6 months, proves that I'm right here. So he never rejected Superman. The problem with Gunn is ego, and he talks too much. And because he talks so much, you can piece together what he says. Also, sometimes when he says things, let's say they're not exactly totally factual. Like when he said that he spoke to Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder has moved on from DC movies and the Snyderverse. Zack Snyder hasn't told James Gunn he's moved on. And if you're as naive as Our Movie Reviews, or whatever that YouTube channel's called, a YouTube channel I actually like, and he's a Snyder fan, he actually believed James Gunn and went onto his channel and said, I'm moving on because Zack's moving on. But Zack Snyder doesn't mess about. If he wanted to move on, if he didn't want you to fight, he wouldn't have you launching, selling Snyderverse to Netflix campaigns. And it's basically day whatever of Netflix not making any statement about that campaign. Non-commentary from Netflix means they approve of that campaign as well. When this campaign was first announced, I laughed, right? I thought this is desperation. Now I'm not laughing anymore. I'm supporting it, and I think it's got a chance. I'm not saying a big chance, but it's got a chance of succeeding. And basically, because they removed Cavill as Superman, that's why this campaign started. So basically, these people, these incompetent fools, have brought it on themselves. So yeah, absolutely, it's no question for me that James Gunn from the very beginning was brought in to replace Walter Hamada. And from the outside looking in, you could say, well, Mick, it's actually a good idea, isn't it? James Gunn has made 3 Marvel movies. 2 of them were really successful. The third one's probably going to be really good and successful. The holiday special, should I say, was very, very good as well. He's a talented writer-director. It's a good idea, isn't it? I mean, the best of ideas would have been not to remove Zack Snyder, allow him to finish what he did, what he started, and then bring in James Gunn or whoever they wanted. By firing Zack Snyder, which is what they did, they created a big problem. Now, if Justice League had have succeeded and was a better movie, or if they just scrapped the Snyderverse and started again with Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon, we wouldn't be here now. So this situation isn't going away anytime soon. Because if they at least had brought Henry Cavill back for one movie. I think this situation could have easily gone away. But that's another thing that I've been saying, that they had no intention ever of bringing Henry Cavill back. They lied about bringing Henry Cavill back. It wouldn't surprise me if Henry Cavill was also aware of this. Don't forget, he never signed any contract. So basically, it's a mess. But James Gunn exposing this situation, and you can only ask James. I mean, maybe you should all go on Twitter and ask James, why did you reveal this about you working on Creature Commandos and Superman Legacy for over 6 months? Why would you tell us that? Why would you pull the pin out that grenade and throw it? Why would you launch that bomb? It makes no sense. He's either very, very stupid or he's very astute, and he's done it for a reason. I don't know which one it is. Maybe one day we'll find out. So I've said many times that I like Gunn's slate so far. I like the fact it's called Gods and Monsters. What's on the slate is very exciting. Now, he was asked on Twitter if Wonder Woman is taking a break for a long time or if we'll see her back soon. James Gunn said yes and no. Basically meaning that she's not rested and she will be involved in Gods and Monsters Phase 1. I think Gods and Monsters is Chapter 1. The next chapter will probably be called something else. I also believe that Gods and Monsters is a very, very long slate, and this is just a quarter of what we're getting. Also, when I reacted to this slate, I told you that the Lantern show on HBO Max would be the launch for a Green Lantern Corps movie, and I also said Paradise Lost, the Wonder Woman prequel set on Fantasy Island, aka Themyscira, would also launch a Wonder Woman movie. The question isn't whether or not we get Wonder Woman. We know we're getting a Wonder Woman movie. It's obvious. But who is going to play Wonder Woman? We simply don't know. The only thing we've had from Gal recently is when I think she had an exchange with Evangeline Lilly. He was talking about her latest movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. When she said she was offered the Wonder Woman role and she turned it down. And I think Gal said, let's do a crossover. Or I think Evangeline said, let's do a crossover. And Gal said, yeah, let's. I have no idea if Gal Gadot is going to continue as Wonder Woman. James Gunn has denied that he's let her go, but that doesn't mean she won't resign as this character. But right now, we are in the dark about the future of Gal's Wonder Woman. But sooner rather than later, we're going to find that out. So it's another curious situation. Ultimately, all the noise will go away if Superman Legacy is successful. If Superman Legacy is successful. And that's the big one, isn't it, everyone? So that's where I am with that. Now, let's discuss Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We kind of went over this yesterday on my live rendition of Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. But I want to tell you why it's impossible to fix the problems of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a road movie. And basically, it's a road movie between Orm and Jason Momoa's Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. There are underwater battles. It's very, very epic. But the main theme of this movie is the world that we live in and what's happening to it. And it's basically got so much environmental commentary. The problem with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is that it's preachy. And there's a lot more dialogue in the film, a lot less action. I've just said that there is action in this movie. It does look great, but not as much. It's not as fast-paced as the first movie. That's another issue. The biggest problem of this movie is it's co-written by Jason Momoa, as I mentioned yesterday. Something, if I was in charge, I would never have allowed to happen. I like Jason. I like Jason as Aquaman, but they should have never have allowed that to happen. Now, he's a huge environmentalist. Now, I don't have any problem with environmental commentary in our movies, but many climate change deniers will. And this is the problem today. 30 years ago, you could make a movie, even a superhero movie, with environmentalist commentary and kind of forewarning about what's happening to our world. People wouldn't call you woke or preachy. But unfortunately, because Hollywood keep on preaching about everything and they don't really know how to execute these things properly, this is why they get themselves in trouble. And this is one of many reasons why this film is going to be in trouble and most probably won't make a lot of money. The environmental commentary is a problem. It does end up looking preachy. Aquaman, Arthur Curry, does address the UN at the end of the movie, which is a very preachy situation. I don't think that's going to go down very well either. Basically, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom isn't the first Aquaman, which I find a heartening, emotional, compelling, brilliant, fun movie that really works to me. But basically, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom isn't that movie. Also, there's the Batman problem that they had. So let me explain to you the Batman problem. Originally, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was coming after The Flash. So Michael Keaton's Batman was going to be canon under that timeline. So he appears twice in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Then when Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was coming out before the Flash movie, they cut the Keaton Batman scenes in, and that's why Ben Affleck was going to be Batman in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now we've got a new timeline where Keaton will not be Batman, so he won't be in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and obviously Batfleck isn't Batman by the end of basically. What did I say? Anyway, I'll say it again. Ben Affleck isn't Batman anymore in the Saffron and Gunn timeline, so you can't have either the Batfleck cameo or the two cameos from Michael Keaton's Batman. And basically Keaton's cameo, I mean, you got that moment when he's warning Arthur Curry that there's something going on beneath the water. And so it's a shame, because I think we would have all loved to have seen Michael Keaton in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's a couple of great cameos. I don't know what they were going to do with Ben Affleck, but also when we look at the Ben Affleck cameo and how they clumsily announced it purposely. Snyder fans started to think wrongly this meant that they were restoring the Snyderverse. This wasn't the case. The only reason Ben was going to appear as Bruce Wayne in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is because they had changed the schedule of the movies, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom was suddenly coming before the Flash movie, before the timeline change. Now, in Blue Beetle, Michael Keaton's Batman was also going to appear. He won't be appearing in that movie either. So I hope you actually understand the situation now. And for me, to try and fix Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, you need to inject a faster pace, which is difficult. How do you do that? I mean, you could try that. They tried to do that with Birds of Prey, and they brought in Chad Zelensky, who is the guy who directs all the John Wick movies. It didn't work because they brought him into the process far too late. It wasn't Chad's fault. He did what he could. The fault was in Water Hamada, and of course, Kathy Yan, who's a really good indie director, but give her a comic book movie, give her a CBM, she don't know what she's doing, and she's another nutter, crazy, progressive, who dressed up the Birds of Prey. Let's just say she dressed down the Birds of Prey. So, you've got to have the right people, and unfortunately Hollywood has driven out all the talented people. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is in genuine trouble. They will attempt to put a more pace to it, more action to it. I don't know if that can help the movie. I don't see. I mean, I said on my live yesterday, there's different cuts. I mean, this is a point as well, because I've got to be balanced here. I always try and be balanced. That there's multiple cuts of movies. So the cut of the movie that people saw may have been a lot slower and not what people want to see. Apparently someone or a few people actually walked out of the test screening as well. But the truth of the matter is, none of the Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom test screenings have been, the reaction to them hasn't been very good. I don't think it's a case of people saying this is a really, really bad movie. I think people have found it to be a very, very boring and dull movie. I will say, it's definitely a slower paced and duller movie than the first movie. But I don't agree that the first movie was bad as well. That's a Collider.com view. That's not a view of me here at Movies TV Mad. I thoroughly enjoyed the first Aquaman movie. But unfortunately, sometimes with success, people decide to grow an ego and they make mistakes. Ultimately, Warner Brothers Discovery need to make money out of this movie. But thankfully, this movie isn't part of the future. Now, Jason Momoa keeps on insisting he'll be Aquaman. But if this movie ends up on your screens in movie theatres and cinemas as bad and as dull and as boring as it's been in the test screening, and it fails, Zaslav's going to say, no, you are done. The truth of the matter is, he is done as Aquaman. The truth of the matter is, Ezra Miller is done as the Flash, but they can't tell you this. They can't tell you this. Now, because Henry Cavill doesn't have any movies, they can tell you he's done. We decided not to go forward with that Man of Steel sequel we are going to make. But Henry has one last chance. And it's the group of positive fans who have basically started... Excuse me, this throat's really letting me down today. But the fans who have started this Sell Snyderverse to Netflix campaign have given Henry Cavill just a little bit of hope. Because the thing is with Henry Cavill's Superman, he's not just popular with the Snyderverse fans and stans. He's popular throughout the world as Superman. Whether you like those films with him playing Superman or not, Henry Cavill as Superman is very popular. You saw what happened when they lied to us and said he was coming back. It was on every main news bulletin. I'll repeat what I said the other day. It wasn't on entertainment news bulletins. It was actually the headlines on the News at 10, on the BBC, on ITV, on CNN, and beyond. That's what a big deal Henry Cavill is as Superman. So everyone's shocked and disappointed that he's not going to be playing Superman at this moment in time. Now, some people are saying, oh, well, we'll go with whatever they're doing, because some people are like that, because they're DC fans and, they're excited. There's a Superman film coming. Surely it's going to be great, right? Surely they won't let us down, right? Well, we're going to find out. The time for talking for James Gunn will be over sooner rather than later. But yeah, I'm not giving up on Henry Cavill coming back as Superman. I'm not giving up on Zack Snyder's Snyderverse being restored, because I think where there's life and there's hope, and there's a lot of big, there's lots of big journalists in the entertainment industry, entertainment journalists now talking about the campaign to sell Snyderverse to Netflix, and a lot of people are supportive to it. You'll get the odd journalist talking about toxic Snyder fans, but the toxic Snyder fans are not part of this Sell Snyderverse to Netflix campaign. This is one of the reasons this campaign was formed. So the fandom, the good members of the fandom, could distance themselves from the toxicity. And ain't that the truth? Because the Fire James Gunn hashtag may have been quite popular, but it was never going to lead to anything. The only way that James Gunn and Peter Safran are removed is if their plan fails. But make no mistake, their plan has been in the development stages since James Gunn came in and started developing the Suicide Squad. You could even argue the Suicide Squad was part of his new plan, right? So he was brought in to replace Hamada from the very beginning. And as we all know, Peter Safran was there from the very beginning. He produced Shazam. He produced Aquaman. He's produced other movies for them. So, he was there anyway. Gunn was brought in to replace Hamada. So, he was there before Zaslav came in. So, Zaslav was open to many things. But it was clear that Zaslav didn't believe there was much of a future in the current DCEU. And guess what? Zaslav is right there. Birds of Prey, Disaster, Suicide Squad, flopped. Black Adam, flopped. You know, as I say, the last movie to be successful was the Joker movie. That movie that progressives and the extreme left hate made a lot of money. Partially because the extreme left and progressives went around telling you if you went to see that movie, you could end up getting shot and killed. That's how insane that movement is. So, we are now on the precipice of these final 4 movies. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, unfortunately, we have a young woman called Rachel Zegler who's playing a big role in this movie, who is the worst thing for marketing since Brie Larson, talking about women's rights, talking about this, talking about that. We've now got David F. Sandberg saying that the women in this film, the villains in this film, are not wrong, they're just going about it in the wrong way. Ultimately, it's about those bad men taking power away from women. Oh yes, and guess what? If that wasn't bad enough, this film is projected to not even make 500 million at the global box office, and you've got David F. Sandberg and Rachel Zegler virtue signalling about women's rights, and basically saying that these villains are strong and powerful and not bad people at the end of the day because men took away their power. This is where we are in this industry. This is not a consumer-based industry anymore to make money. It's about standing on a soapbox and attacking my gender and your gender and saying we're all bad people. It doesn't matter if they don't know us. We're men and we're bad, right? This is why I'm writing my Gender Wars novel, to kind of catalogue what these nut jobs have been doing. But at the end of the day, when you've got marketing like this, so basically we now know that Shazam! Fury of the Gods is another, extremist feminist movie saying that these villains had their power taken from them by men. Wow! Can't wait to see that film, can you? And will we get much of a difference from James Gunn's DC? We all know he's a progressive as well. We all know he used to make strong political points, right? Before he got cancelled. So are we going to see any difference here? It's interesting. I hope the industry can move on to making entertainment for everyone instead of virtue signalling and attacking straight white males. I really hope that's the case. But I must admit, I'm very doubtful. I hope that Superman Legacy is a great movie. So basically, everyone, it's about getting these 4 movies out the way. I hope we can enjoy them. But when you hear some of the talk already for Shazam! And Fury of the Gods and you find out what it's about, it's very, very off-putting. This movie will not make a lot of money. It's going to make a lot less money if someone doesn't gag Rachel Zegler, because she really is an extremist. She is terrible. She really is. If you've ever experienced her Twitter posts, you'll see what an extremist she really is, and she really isn't good for business. Thankfully, she won't be involved in the future. Basically, none of these films are part of the future. These films are there. They were made, so they had to show them. You can't invest all that money and not show the product. So, as I said on my live yesterday, these films will probably get their money back. Now, the Flash movie has the potential, because of the cameos and stuff, to maybe make a little bit more and actually be an impressive hit. The trailer certainly looked great, but we are at one of the worst points in the history of entertainment. And the only thing I'm doing right now is watching what I used to watch growing up, because we are at a very depressing point in entertainment, and I don't see it getting any better. This has been Wednesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.